Hey, Uncle Ben from Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. We have great personal power, which means we have to accept personal responsibility for what we do. We don't have to accept responsibility for what someone else did to us. We don't have to accept blame for what anybody else did to us. If you are going to blame other people for the bad things that have happened in your life, you better be ready to give them credit for all the good things that have happened in your life. But if you're spending more of that time focused on blaming others for all of that, then you kind of really can't take all the credit for the good things, because you've been busy giving away your power to other people and blaming them for the bad things. Welcome to the Energy Within podcast, helping you to embrace your weird, beat imposter syndrome, and take action on your soul's purpose. My name is Carrie Jokala. I am your host. I am a Reiki master teacher, a fitness instructor, a wife, a mom to 2 little boys, and this is episode 187, and we'll see how this goes. I'm a little nervous, although I know I shouldn't be. Like, I'm feeling support and messages right now, like everything's gonna be fine. Especially since I don't plan to get super specific about anything, but we'll see what happens. So this is kind of a part 2 to the solar plexus chakra, because we were talking a lot in that episode about how that is basically your confidence chakra, your personal power chakra, your sense of identity. And as you heard, if you listened to that one, I could keep going on and on because in many ways, like I said, I feel like that's my chakra. Like, that's my area of expertise, because that's been the entire point of this podcast, of my Reiki business, of anything I've ever tried to do. There's always been a through line of improving my own confidence and teaching others how to improve their confidence. But it also brings up the whole personal power, aka personal responsibility topic. So let me start with my normal caveats in case you're new here. That I don't know if I'm going to come across preachy today. If I do, that's not my intention, because I never ever put anything out with the thought that I've got it right or I've got it all figured out. It's just my current thoughts, my personal experience or understanding of something, my personal beliefs. And I believe we're all entitled to our own beliefs. We can disagree with each other. We should still be able to get along, ideally, even if our beliefs are different. But obviously, we know in today's world that's not always how it works, unfortunately. But that's the position I've always had, that we are all entitled to our own opinion. It doesn't mean that we have to not get along. But, you know, there we are. I also never put anything out with the thought that, kind of on the same lines, but never with the thought that I'm right and you're wrong, or I've got it all figured out. And certainly never with the idea that I'm in any way perfect at anything I ever suggest, or think that the end goal of something is. It's always a work in progress for me. Even confidence. I am light years ahead of where I used to be, and every few years I think it jumps another set of light years. But that doesn't mean that I've reached any sort of end goal, or that I always have perfect confidence. For example, in going to record this episode, I really wanted to make sure I got it out. And here's my Virgo-ness in order so that it was still showing up in the feed next to the solar plexus episode. I didn't want to go solar plexus, then the heart, and then all of a sudden go back and have solar plexus part 2. And that's just me. So here I am on Tuesday, and I put episodes out on Wednesday. I wanted to also get the heart chakra episode out on the same Wednesday, so I was going to put 2 episodes out. We'll see what has happened by the time you're listening to this. We'll see how much of a superwoman I can be in recording and editing when I also already have other things scheduled today that I'll have to work around. But this is me in deciding to go ahead and do an episode on personal responsibility. This is me allowing my throat chakra to open even a little bit more. Who knew that going back to basics and just recording episodes to explain what the chakras are would force my throat chakra open even more? And in fact, I'm going to edit out every time I've cleared my throat so far, but I think my throat chakra has been working on making sure that it's open, because I've had to clear my throat about probably 20 times since I hit record already at this point. But I've been thinking a lot over and over about what I might say in the episode over the last few days, and then still not hitting record and getting nervous, and maybe I shouldn't, and what if it's not actually time for me to step that far out? And so I keep intending to sit down and tune in to meditate or something to try to pick up a sign, and I just couldn't get myself quiet enough. I couldn't give myself enough time where I could relax enough. And this morning I was able to do that. I asked for a sign. I got 2 signs. One was immediately after I finished asking for a sign, and then one was just a little while later. Plus, my confidence has been being boosted in the last few weeks, and especially since learning about the law of assumption in a training that I just took, which feels like it's been at least a week, but it was literally just this last Friday, which is almost a week, I know, by the time you're listening to this, but it's Tuesday as I'm recording this, so it really wasn't that long ago. But I feel like I've gone through so much, I think, energetically since that training, that it feels like it's been a really long time since I took it. The law of assumption, I'm not going to get real deep into it because, like I said, I've had 1 training on it. And that's also not what this episode is about. But it's my understanding of it so far is that the easiest way to explain it is it's kind of similar in ways to the law of attraction, but it's much more firm in how you believe what you're putting out there. So it's not just aligning to the frequency of what you want and allowing it to come to you, to be attracted to you. It is fully believing, full body believing that you are the creator of your own life. And basically it's, I always get what I want. And some people could look at that and think, wow, that's really cocky. But if you can, maybe I'll talk about this when I record the heart chakra episode. I don't know. We'll see what comes up. But when you are coming at something from a place of pure love and understanding that you really are a piece of God, that you have that power, which is kind of still here actually now in the solar plexus, you have that power. You are a creative being, your sacral chakra. You are designed to want to create, to be able to create. That means you can create the life that you want. And the law of assumption is allowing you to really fully step into that belief that you are capable of it. Many of us want it, but we don't believe that we're capable of it. But if you can shift yourself into that full body, yes, I got this energy, that's the law of assumption. And I've been working on getting myself and keeping myself in that energy. And so far, it's working. So I'm doing my best to be in that energy right now, too. So I am going to try to make this quick because I do also have a class to go teach today. But personal responsibility, your solar plexus. I don't know if I specifically mentioned the names of the two archetypes associated with the solar plexus. So much happens every week that I can't remember exactly what I said. But whether I said it or not, here's the reminder if I did say it. So the two archetypes in the solar plexus are the spiritual warrior and the drudge. So the spiritual warrior, I'm just going to read from the book here. The power of the spiritual warrior lies in inner strength, tempered by a belief that guidance comes from a divine force. This strength becomes honed and refined through facing and overcoming external challenges. So this is me talking now, so it's the energy of co-creation. So even in believing I am the creator, I get whatever I want, I can create the reality that I want, there's an understanding there that's coming from the heart chakra that it's co-creation with God. And it's so hard to explain exactly the way it makes sense in my brain, but I think that's the easiest way to say it. And we'll return in a second to this idea of facing and overcoming external challenges. So the opposite of the spiritual warrior is the drudge. A drudge mentality depends on others for recognition and approval, investing everyone else with qualities and power that they wish they owned themselves. And indeed do own, if only they could acknowledge that. So that's kind of where I was in my confidence journey in the beginning, when I really didn't have full confidence by any means. I was definitely in the victim and the martyr mindsets. If someone else would just notice me, if someone else would just validate and approve me by telling me how awesome they think I am and wanting to be my friend, and looking at everybody else that I thought had these amazing qualities that I wanted. Didn't realize that I actually did have if I would just stop worrying about everybody else and tune into what I had the ability to tune into. But that spiritual warrior is, not to get too redundant from last week because we're going to keep going, but it's shifting into that belief, the understanding, the truth that no matter what happens, no matter how bad it might be, and yeah, I am even getting into if something traumatic happens, not that you ever need to make a decision right away and sit in your grief as long as you need, but when you're ready to, you remember that you always have the ability to decide what happens next. And let me stress again, that doesn't mean that it's easy, because especially if we're thinking about here, we could be just talking about an average everyday situation that might suck. But I do believe also, even in traumatic instances, that making the decision to move forward and be the person you really want to be, and shifting yourself into that energy and taking the actions that represent you being the person you want to be going forward, it's hard. It's not an easy decision. It's not easy to take action, especially when something major has happened, to move yourself forward. And I stress again, like I always say too, there's not a timeline. So in no way am I saying here that right after something traumatic that you should be now shifting into the next energy of who you want to be now. No, when you're ready. But being self-aware enough to know when you're ready, or to know when you're ready enough. Because in trusting that you can make the decision you need to make to be the person you want to be now, either because of or despite what has happened, trusting that you are strong enough to handle whatever happens as a result of the decision that you make. And that perhaps you can even come out stronger as a result. Doesn't mean it's going to be an easy journey by any means. It could be, but that doesn't mean it will be. But I think that's one of the true tests of character, and one of the true tests of your soul and your soul growth, is first remembering that you always have control over where you head next. Notice I didn't say necessarily reaching the end goal right away, but starting that path at least, and trusting that you can handle what comes up as a result. Because everything could get extremely shaken up as a result of a decision, but what if that's the way it's meant to go, to open up the rest of the path that you've decided you want to head down? We can't go through life, I don't think, without any challenges at all, because how would we grow? Both as a human and as a soul. Of course, there are things that should never happen to anyone that we don't ever want to happen. And while I do believe in soul contracts, I do believe that everything happens for a reason. I also know that it's never appropriate to tell anyone, especially right after something traumatic or in the middle of something traumatic, that everything happens for a reason, because that is not comforting to hear. Even if you believe it, it's not comforting to hear that in the midst of something difficult. You may never want to hear it at any point in relation to whatever that situation is. So I think maybe the better way to look at it is, first of all, soul contracts aside, everything happening for a reason aside, everybody here has free will, which means other people are going to do things that are out of alignment with what you think people should be doing. All you can control is what you do next, how you respond, the actions you take next. This is your personal responsibility. Other people are going to do crappy things, say mean things, do things that you don't agree with. But the next question is, what do you do next? How do you show up as your best and highest self, your best possible self, either as a result of or despite what has happened? And ideally, we're going to do this from a place of pure divine love, and that's not being a pushover, that's not being a doormat, that's not just allowing things to happen that really shouldn't happen. It's not saying that an argument wouldn't ensue, but how are we behaving through all of that? What kinds of words are coming out of our mouth? Are they firm but helpful, where it's actually going to make a difference, or are we just being rude? Are we just hurling insults? I think there's been, now this is just my belief, and I'm not going into specifics, but I feel like there is a real lack of anyone wanting to, and I don't mean anyone like everyone else, this is just how it's coming out. You know what I mean, I hope. But I just feel like there's a big push that we shouldn't have to accept any personal responsibility at all, especially when other people say or do things that we either don't like or are actually plain wrong. And we all have different beliefs on what might fall into those categories. And that's fine. But I think if more of us would accept this personal responsibility, that regardless of what happens outside of us, regardless of what happens to us, even if you want to say it's happening for you, regardless of all of that, whatever happens that we cannot actually control outside of us, we have personal power and therefore personal responsibility. Hey, Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. We have great personal power, which means we have to accept personal responsibility for what we do. We don't have to accept responsibility for what someone else did to us. We don't have to accept blame for what anybody else did to us. I'm not saying that at all. Especially in really traumatic and abusive situations, I am not at all saying you do not go back and accept any kind of blame for what somebody else did. But what can you do moving forward? And I know, especially in the harder situations, if we are going to talk about abuse and trauma, that even deciding that you want different, even starting to really fully believe that you are capable of changing the situation, that doesn't mean it's going to create an instant shift or that it's going to be easy. What it means is we do our best. It might even mean asking for help. taking personal responsibility doesn't always either have to mean that you have to do it alone. Just because you have personal power and personal responsibility, it doesn't mean you can't ask for help. There's something very powerful and also very responsible in many situations about asking for help. That's extremely powerful, to ask for help. So the other thing we need to talk about is specifically the blame. But in this instance, in this part of it, we're not talking about the traumatic or abusive experience. We're just talking about general, normal, everyday life experiences at this point. For this one, our daily experiences. So I think I first heard this from Tony Robbins, but I know I've heard other people say this too. So I don't know if he originated it or if someone else did and he just repeated it and then I've heard it from other people. But it's basically that if you are going to blame other people for the bad things that have happened in your life, you better be ready to give them credit for all the good things that have happened in your life. And I think I actually may have talked about this a long time ago. I don't know in what episode, but it's making its way back. It's time to talk about it again. Here's where the personal responsibility and personal power fits into this. So I think there are plenty of instances where we do give people credit for the times that they've helped us, but there's a lot that we know we've done ourselves, or that it was with somebody's help, but we deserve just as much or maybe more, probably more of the credit because we were the ones who did the work. So you don't want to completely give away your own credit because you deserve the credit when you've done something that's been positive for you, that's helped to move you forward. But if you're spending more of your time focused on blaming others for the bad things that have happened to you, for the way that your life is, for the situations that you keep experiencing. And again, in this instance, we're just talking about normal, expected, everyday type things, nothing traumatic. But if you're spending more of that time focused on blaming others for all of that, then you kind of really can't take all the credit for the good things because you've been busy giving away your power to other people and blaming them for the bad things. And there has to be some level, like I've been saying through this whole thing, it's the same idea. There has to be some level of personal responsibility for how you are handling things, for what you are doing, for what you are saying, for the way you're talking to yourself, for the way you're presenting yourself out in the world, for the actions that you're taking or not taking. If you want to be able to take full responsibility, full credit for the good things, you've got to own your part in some of the negative things or things that we're viewing as negative that have resulted in some not so great things or some setbacks or some obstacles. And even if it really was truly, mostly, or even fully someone else's fault that something happened, it's still up to you what you do next. And I'll go back to the beginning. Again, not saying that any of it is easy. But if you are truly tuned in with your solar plexus, if it's clear, if it's balanced, then you'll have that ability to remember your own personal power and personal responsibility, to know that you get to decide what happens next, and you will have that full trust that you are co-creating with God, and therefore you can handle whatever happens next. Because it might be something tough to handle. But like I said, it might be necessary. You're a lot more powerful than you've probably been giving yourself credit for. So I think this is one way that a lot of our problems in this world with each other, a lot of the personal interaction problems can be solved. And that's if we all start to remember our own personal power and personal responsibility, rather than always trying to shift it off to somebody else. We don't go so far as to let it shift our mindset to where we're feeling now like a victim or a martyr because now we're taking the blame for everything. It's not that. So hopefully that's not what you got out of this. Hopefully this has made sense to where you just understand that you are strong, you are capable. Blame and responsibility are two different things in this conversation. And maybe that should just be the quote for this episode. Is Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. You have great personal power. And to fully tap into it and to use it in the best way possible for your highest good, for the collective's highest good, is to also own your personal responsibility around it. I hope that was helpful. I hope that wasn't too preachy. I hope that that came across in the way that I intended it to. If this resonated, if this did make sense, if this awakened something in you, please share it. Please feel free to take a screenshot or grab some audio, post it to your social media, to your Instagram. Tag me on Instagram at I am Carrie Jokala. Make sure you hop inside the Energy Within Facebook group. And if you are feeling like you need some help in this area, this is what I do. This is what my Reiki sessions are all about. Is helping you to build your confidence, helping you to feel ready to take responsibility, to take action, so you can move through your soul's purpose and live out your soul's purpose and the life that you're here to have. So you can find the link for everything always in the show notes. Stay tuned for the official announcement of where my in-person Reiki sessions will be coming up. And in the meantime, if you've been thinking about it, this is your sign. Go ahead and book that Reiki session. Let's start this work. Let's start to clear the blockages so you can fully be who you are meant to be. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.